It's time now for Countywide, a special presentation of Yavapai Broadcasting News. Join News Director Paul David as he talks with our community's leaders, newsmakers, and people in the know. You'll hear about the hot topics that affect all our lives in Yavapai County. And now, here's today's Countywide.
Welcome to Countywide. I'm Paul David. As always, it is great to have you in studio today. We're going to bring you up to speed on the Travel ID. Coming up October 1st, 2020 is when you're going to have it, or I guess not have to have it, but it's recommended that you do have it. MVD spokesman Doug Nickett studio. Welcome back.
Thanks. Good to be here. Always good to be in the Verde Valley. We were just catching up on old mostly true stories about the Verde Valley.
True stories of the Verde Valley. The things we've seen over the years as we've grown up.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Coming through the area here for sure. aztravelid.com is one website. Now, is that available right now, Doug? Or
Yeah,
is it
that's a really good website, aztravelid.com.
Okay.
If you go on that website, you will be able to get started on the process for applying for a travel ID. So it helps get some of the documentation out of the way. And then you can make an appointment at servicearizona.com to come in to an MVD office and get the ID. Now, you don't have to make an appointment, but we encourage it. But you're always welcome to walk in. We love to see you.
Okay, all right, but it goes faster with an appointment.
It does.
We'll get to more of that too. Let's take us back in time a little bit, because Travel ID has been around. I think you said prior it's been about a year and a half since you've been here and sat down about Travel ID.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, and then, but it's been in the works for many, many years, this Travel ID.
Right. We've been making it available at ADOT, the MVD at ADOT, since March of 2016. And so it's hasn't been that long, really, but it goes back to 2005 when the federal government, the Congress, passed the Real ID Act. So this is, Travel ID is Arizona's version of the Real ID. We can't call it that here. State law doesn't allow us. They don't want to, federalize this too much. But we offer the Travel ID. It's Real ID compliant. And as I said, the 9/11 Commission came up with the idea that because of the tragedy of 9/11 and all that went into that, and how those terrorists were able to access IDs and so forth, to make it more robust, or the regulations more robust rather, to get your ID. So you have to bring in a birth certificate or a passport or some form of identification, bring in your Social Security card, bring in proof of residency, that kind of thing, so that there's more behind the ID, so to speak. And you get that star on the right-hand corner of your Arizona driver license that shows that you're compliant. That means in about a year, just about a year, October 1 of 2020, you'll get through the TSA checkpoints, whether it's Flagstaff, Phoenix, Prescott, Albuquerque, wherever. It's a nationwide program, so we're concerned that people, just on a human level, as society, we hate to see people stuck at an airport because
I'll say I'm a procrastinator, Doug.
I've
been putting it off. I've been putting it off. I have.
Right, and that's okay. You have another year, but we want to avoid people getting stuck at the airport, especially the leisure traveler. Somebody doesn't fly as a matter of course every week. The road warrior who's doing it all the time, they're good to go probably. But the family that's planning the trip of a lifetime to go to Orlando or New York or something like that, and they're doing their vacation plans and they show up in October of 2020 and they don't all have their travel ID if you're over 18, then they're stuck and they're not going to go on that trip of a lifetime. Or if a family emergency, God forbid, was to happen to somebody and you had to fly to Chicago on a last-minute notice to see a relative in distress or something like that, but you don't have the travel ID and you don't have something else, you're not going to get on that plane. So we don't want to see that, of course. But we also don't want to see people, excuse me, we also don't want to see people lined up out the door at MVD offices a year from now with a crush of 3-hour wait or something like that. That's just, a nightmare scenario that we're trying to avoid. So it's kind of a balance of, there's a practical reason for doing this for you, and a practical reason is for state government to want you to do this, so that you're not finding yourself in a panic in the last minute.
I'll probably have you back next year around the same time just to say, look, the crunch is on now, and now's the time to get this done. Let me ask you this. Okay, so if I don't decide, because there's going to be people out there that say, no, you're not going to tell me I have to get a travel ID.
And you don't have to. That's true.
Right. There are folks out there that just, there's no way I'm going to get this travel ID.
Right.
what are the other options I have if I do go to Sky Harbor and I want to fly to Chicago, say?
Right. So Arizona is one of 37 states, so we're not unusual in this regard of allowing you a choice. But if you don't change your driver license or ID, you'll need a valid U.S. or foreign passport, but it has to be valid. A military photo ID would work. Tribal photo ID would work. So if you're in that class of person that you have a photo ID that's already federally acceptable, then you're probably fine. As long as it's something you carry with you on a regular basis, a passport card, the photo card, that will also be acceptable. There are probably some other things as well. And if you go to azdot.gov/travel ID, it links to the federal site that has the entire documentation. It's a huge list. But for most people, it's going to be either a passport or some sort of military or tribal ID that most people would carry, if not a driver license.
And this is traveling across the country or even out of the country. The travel ID,
this is true? This is for domestic travel. This does not replace in any way a passport.
Okay.
So if you're going to Canada, Mexico, overseas, you definitely want to carry your passport. In fact, I don't think you can even get on a plane right now without, if it's an international flight, without the flight attendants and the people at the gate saying, okay, you've got to have your passport. But this does not replace a passport. We actually did have a situation a few years ago where a gentleman went down into just the other side of Mexico near Naco down in southern Arizona. And he did not have his passport, and he thought that his travel ID would get him back through customs and ICE there at the Naco border, and they figured it out. They worked it out for him, but he needed his passport. He wrote a letter to the paper saying he was complaining that the travel ID wasn't a passport, and well, no, it's not. So don't take that without your passport if you are going out of the country. But for domestic travel, you will need it. So the choice kind of is, if you want to carry your passport to fly to Portland, if you don't have the travel ID, you'll need that, or something like it.
So in that case, the travel ID, like my wife and I, we like to go on cruises, and so that takes you down to New Mexico. There again, you have to have your passport.
You would want your passport now,
and travel ID with you.
Well, if you're going to fly, certainly.
Both of them, sure.
If you're going to drive into Hermosillo or drive down to Ensenada or whatever, Hermosillo has very few cruises, I suppose. But
I know where it is, though. I know where it is. I've been there.
But if you're driving to a foreign country, if you're going to drive up to Canada or something, you don't need the travel ID because you're not getting on an airplane. This is only for air travel or to get into federal buildings. So that's an issue, especially, you think of some federal services that are available, in parts of Arizona that have a huge federal presence, whether it's the Forest Service or whomever. So you might want to consider that. Or if you're going to go to a nuclear power plant, which isn't too many people, I suppose, but it does apply to that as well.
I'd tour one. That'd be interesting.
I've toured it too. It is fascinating.
Yeah, I would be interested in that. Okay, so to be honest, it's going to just make, I would say it's going to make life easier. I mean, I've got my regular driver's license right now.
Right.
It's got my address. People are going to be saying this. It's got my address. It's got my photo ID. That's me on there.
Right.
It's got the holograms and stuff in there as well. So why do we really need to switch to this travel ID? But this is just
it's to comply with federal law, and again, it's voluntary. If you don't want to do that, that's fine. It's just the real hammer there is that you're not going to get past the TSA security checkpoints unless you have something else.
Okay, and this all came out of 9/11 when 9/11
all came out
happened.
of the 9/11 Commission.
A few years later, we came up with this idea. Well, we'll get this ID, and this is going to be what kind of standard? Let me ask you this: the one that I get here in Arizona, other than saying Arizona, will they look the same all the way across the country, or each state has their own?
Each state has its own look for a driver license, but it's going to have, in most cases, a gold star, but a star of some sort up in the right-hand corner.
Okay.
So it will be very clear to a TSA agent that this has met the requirements of the federal law, which is you've brought your primary form of ID, like a passport or a birth certificate. That's one that you need. Your current driver license does not act as a primary form of ID for this purpose.
You know what? Let's take our first break. We'll come back, and then let's talk about when I go into the office or I sit down and go to aztravelid.com. What do I need in front of me to make sure that I'm ready? So when I go into the MVD office for my appointment, hopefully it works out better. Okay. MVD spokesman Doug Nick in studio. Websites for you: servicearizona.com, aztravelid.com. This is Countywide. We'll be back in just a couple minutes.
Solid Rock Fitness is a one-on-one fitness studio specializing in fitness over 50. I train older adults of all fitness levels, from athletes and avid sports participants to folks with chronic pain, to those recovering from surgeries. You and I will focus on strength training to improve overall muscle tone, core conditioning, balance, agility, flexibility, and nutrition. Mastery of these components of fitness will help you live your life to the fullest with confidence and competence.
Paul Stanley here with Stanley Steel Structures. We offer shade structures that provide style, value, and performance. Our Equinox louvered roof opens and closes to give you the ultimate patio experience. We also offer Alumawood shade covers that looks like wood but lasts like steel and never needs painting or maintenance. Visit us at StanleySteelStructures.com. Contact us today and be covered tomorrow. Stanley Steel Structures. Let us add some space to your place.
Fabulous views and unmatched quality with efficiency in mind. Just announced, C&B Construction is the only contractor ever to win the EPA's coveted Indoor Air Plus Leaders Award 4 years in a row. These Energy Star certified homes provide unparalleled energy efficiency, comfort, durability, and indoor air quality. C&B Construction is currently building at Gray Fox Ridge and Crossroads at Mingus. C&B Construction, locally respected and nationally recognized.
Hi, I'm your host, Smokey Colbert, filling in for Smokey because after 75 years of...
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Turns out there's much more to say. Nearly 90% of wildfires are caused by us humans being careless, dumping our used barbecue coals willy-nilly. Guess the song was wrong. We did start the fire. That's why I respect Mother Nature and her trees, whether coniferous or new car scented. Go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention.
Welcome back to Countywide. We're talking about Travel ID with MBD spokesman Doug Nick. Websites, again, in case you didn't get them, servicearizona.com, and there is aztravelid.com. Okay, so we were talking about when I go to aztravelid.com,
Right.
What am I going to need in order to get kind of started on this Travel ID?
Well, it's going to help kind of walk you through the process and ultimately what you'll need to bring in to your MBD office. You're going to get your photo taken again, so you're going to bring this documentation. Bring in something like your birth certificate, which frankly in Arizona we know there's so many people from elsewhere that can be difficult, but that is the federal requirement. If you don't have that, then a valid passport. Bring that in. Your current driver license does not act as a primary form of identification for these purposes. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but that is the law.
It seems weird.
It is the law. So that's the first document that you need, is something with primary ID.
Passport or birth certificate.
Yeah, there are other things, but that's generally going to be, for most people, that's what it's going to be.
And this will list the other options that we have to choose
does.
from. Okay.
Yes, it does.
Okay.
And then you need, the second thing is something with your Social Security number on it, which for most people is going to be your physical card. If you don't have that, then maybe a tax document or something else that has your actual Social Security number on it, bring that in as well. We don't use that. We don't ever put that on your driver license, by the way. Back in the day, that was not uncommon, but we haven't done that for many, many years. We don't do that anymore. You get a separate driver license number. That's just that. That's kind of an extra,
right.
extra mention here. So you need that. And then the third thing is, and this gets a little more interesting for communities such as those in the Verde Valley, because so many people here use a P.O. box as opposed to a physical address. But you need to bring in 2 pieces of documentation that show your name and your physical address, where you live, not where you get your mail. So usually it's going to be something like a water bill, or maybe a utility bill, a power bill. Now again, I know there are people here that live with well power, maybe have solar, or maybe are not entirely hooked up in some of those areas. If you have satellite television or something, like anything that has
cell phone bill,
a bill. Frankly,
we've all got those.
Even if you get, I don't know, you probably go to a P.O. box, but we say to people who have a physical address, even if you're getting the latest credit card solicitation that you don't want, if it has your name and your physical address on it, we'll take that. A copy of a magazine, if it has your name and a physical address, we'll take that. We've made it a little bit easier at MBD because we do have an affidavit that you can fill out at the office that will say, I am so-and-so, I live at such and such an address, and I will sign, in the presence of this MBD agent, I will sign this affidavit. That will take care of one of those requirements. So we try to make it a little bit easier to fulfill 2 of those requirements, but you're still going to have to bring in 1 other. And that's just the law. It requires 2 pieces of documentation. Once you have those things, you make your appointment at Service Arizona, or you can walk in, whichever you prefer. Come on in. If you've made an appointment, we're pretty good about getting you in and out within 25 minutes or so in most cases.
Okay.
If not, it might take you a little bit longer depending on how busy the office is that day. And a lot of the third-party offices, because I think there are some in the Verde Valley area, these are authorized third parties if they do driver license services. In other words, if they have a camera, not all of them do. But some do. If they have a camera, they can do this as well.
What are these third-party offices? I know that it mentions that, but give me an example of what a third-party office that'll do this.
So I know in the Prescott area, there's a company called Footworks, and I'm not quite sure if they're in the Verde Valley, so forgive me for not knowing that. But
that's okay.
But there are many authorized third parties. They're private businesses. They have to meet certain obligations in order to be authorized as MVD agents. And so some of them actually do driver license and full service. And in order to do the driver license and take the photo and all that, you have to have been in business for a certain number of years. You have to have so many customers per month on average, and you have to meet certain financial bonding and other technical requirements like that. If you don't do that, you can see a lot of third parties that do just title and registration. You get your plates there, that kind of thing. That's quite common as well. A lot of AAA offices do title and registration. They don't do driver licenses. They are authorized. It goes back to about 1994 when the legislature said that would be a great way to augment the state MVD offices.
Sure.
So they're still a great partner with us in what we do. And we monitor all of them for compliance. We monitor ourselves for compliance to make sure that they're doing everything the way they should be. The advantage to third parties is they're usually open later in the evening. They're quite often open on Saturdays. And some of the federal holidays like Columbus Day or some of these other holidays that maybe our MVD offices are closed, a lot of them will be open. The only caveat is that they actually do charge a little bit extra, which is their right to do.
I was going to ask you that.
They've got to pay their people. They've got to pay their rent.
Sure.
So, but those fees are always displayed very prominently in those offices. So, walking in, okay, here's what the fee for XYZ service is. We charge above that. We charge another $5, $10, whatever the case may be.
Okay. All right. So that sounds pretty simple. So go to aztravelid.com, get that filled out first.
Yeah.
Contact servicearizona.com, pick your MVD office that's local to you.
Right.
Set up an appointment, go in, 25, 30 minutes later, you should be done.
Right.
Be ready to smile.
Give it a smile and get a nice photo taken.
Right.
You'll get your credential within about 2 weeks in the mail. Which is how we've been doing that for a long time. You don't pick up your credential in the office anymore. We have to process it, and with all the security features that go into these things now, like you said, the holograms and the barcodes, it has to be produced and then sent back to you. And we're actually going to do more of that. We're going to start central issuance of more things, such as license plates, title work, registration, and tabs. They're going to start coming to you in the mail.
Instead of right there at the...
Yeah, as opposed to just getting it right there, you're going to get it in the mail. It's just more efficient and probably a better way of just doing business.
So I would think that this could be a little bit more difficult to forge this license too. Mike Pitts, our owner, has this license, and he showed it to me a couple of weeks ago. And I saw the gold star in the upper right-hand corner, and it does have the holograms on it. I also noticed it's got some raised lettering or numbering on it as well.
All of those are security features that even non-federal compliant licenses will have those features. That's one reason that we can't issue them at the office anymore. It's not a laminated card like it used to be, basically.
Sure, yeah, that's mine is right now.
Right.
Photo good for 30 years. I'll look 25 forever.
That's right. Our licenses make you immortal in some ways, right?
That's right. They do.
With all the holograms and the barcodes and all the whiz-bang stuff that we have, it's very difficult to actually forge a driver license. I'm not saying it's impossible. I mean, anything man creates, man can defeat, right?
Right.
But it's very, very, very difficult. Identity theft, on the other hand, those people that are doing that are always looking for new ways to steal your identity. But that's an issue for the entire world. That's not an MVD issue. That's financial institutions, just you name it.
All of us, actually.
All of us have to be very vigilant with your. In fact, to that end, actually, it just reminded me that a lot of the young kids that come in and they take their driving test and they get their license or their permit, what do quite often? They'll stand in front of the MVD and mom and dad will take a selfie, and the kid will have this. Here's my my new license, here's my new permit, and this is going out on the internet with their name, their address. If you really want to focus in on that, you can do that. And so what we've put up in all of our offices is called the Safe Selfie station, and it's just a poster, basically a big, like 6-foot poster. It says, "I got my license today," so you can stand there, have fun with it. I mean, every kid that gets that, it's a moment where like, "Hey, I'm out there," it's fair warning if nothing else. And we created this. Another state came up with it, so we kind of stole that great idea. And it's basically the teenager can stand there and don't hold up your identifying information for the camera. Just wave at the camera or whatever and say, "Hey, I got my license today," and you can celebrate that moment without compromising your ID.
It's too bad we can't even think about that. MVD spokesman Doug Nick in studio today. Websites for you again: ServiceArizona.com, AZTravelID.com. Countywide will be back in just a couple minutes.
Regrow, repair, replace. Regenerative medicine is the process of creating living, functional tissues to repair or replace tissue or organ function lost due to age, disease, damage, or congenital defects. Dr. Forrest Lanchbury and the team at Sedona Regenerative Medicine specialize in finding relief for patients suffering from chronic pain. Contact Sedona Regenerative Medicine to learn about anti-aging medicines that will help your body heal itself. 928-282-2520 or SedonaRegen.com.
Starting in the late 1920s, Grandpa Gettle and his brothers laid the groundwork for what would become a family legacy. Almost 100 years and 100 patents later, Gettle's High Desert Mechanical continues to raise the bar of quality heating, cooling, and plumbing products and services in the Verde Valley.
Call Gettle's High Desert Mechanical Heating, Air Conditioning, and Plumbing at 567-2200 or online at GettlesHDM.com, providing solutions for your comfort. Don't settle. Get Gettles.
Listen to me. I am captain of the track team. And if I'm late,
she doesn't really think she's going to get out of here, does she?
Be nice. She's new.
Hello, is anyone there? Ugh!
Wow. Even from our standards, you look awful.
Oh, sweetie, what happened?
Me? My friend Becky got to talk to this super cute boy, and I tried to act like I wasn't jealous, but I so totally was. And then out of nowhere, this concrete barrier just popped up. Maybe it was a semi.
You mean you were driving?
Yeah. I mean, I know the whole eyes on the road thing, but this was a super important text. Maybe you have to know, Becky.
Texting? Great.
But it was only like 5 seconds, and I'm a really, really fast texter, so it wasn't even a big deal. Actually, has she texted me back yet? Wow, I get like no bars in this place. I wonder if they have Wi-Fi here.
Welcome back to Countywide. We've got just a couple minutes left of the program. Websites again, ServiceArizona.com, AZTravelID.com. The deadline again we'll mention to get your travel ID, which again will emphasize you don't have to get it, but it's probably going to make life a lot easier for you. I told you before the show that MVD sent me a notice that said you need to renew your photo.
Right, every 12 years.
Wow, it looks so good. I want to keep the one I've got. Right. But yeah, every 12 years. So I've got to go in. So I figured November is about the time I'll just switch over to the travel ID then.
And that is a good time. If you're going to go in for your photo update anyway, that makes perfect sense. But you can go in anytime. There's not any rule that says you can't update whenever you want. That's one challenge we face, is that in Arizona your driver license is good till you're age 65, and it's every 5 years you have to renew after that. So it's a challenge for us to get people in the door. That's one reason I need to talk to you more, is because we have to remind people, hey, you don't normally have to come in to do this every 4 to 5 years like you do in other states. So please do this now and make the trip. The travel ID is good for 8 years.
There we go. I was going to ask you that next.
Yep.
Okay, 8 years. Okay, so the one I get in October, probably October is when I'll wind up doing it. Right. So that's going to be good for 8 years.
For 8 years, okay. Right. And then after that, when you renew, you don't have to bring in all that paperwork again. You can just renew another 8 years after that and still be compliant with the travel ID.
Now, we got about a minute left, but if I change my address, of course, that's another reason. Do I have to go in to have it changed, or could I just send information on ServiceArizona.com?
Right. To change your address, you can actually do that for free on ServiceArizona.com. And state law is very strict about that. You have to do it within 10 days. Otherwise, if you happen to have a visit with one of our fine state troopers for some reason, not that that would ever happen to you. But,
sure.
But, or one of our fine local police, you will definitely get a ticket for that. So you need to update your address. You don't have to physically get it done on your ID, but you do need to get that done at Service Arizona. It goes on your motor vehicle record, so we know. Yeah, that's all up to date.
And the Travel ID will be the same way, where if I change my address, I just have to send in the information, then you guys send me a new Travel ID.
Right,
okay.
We update everything. So people often get concerned, I don't have this document or that document, but if it's in our system, if it's in the computer, that gets shared with law enforcement if need be.
Okay, so once we establish it, it's established. Yeah. Okay. Doug, thank you so much for coming in.
My pleasure.
We'll probably see you again in a year.
Anytime.
Just to do another reminder and say, hey, the deadline is coming. So again, the website, servicearizona.com, aztravelid.com. That's today's countywide. Thanks for watching and listening, and we'll talk to you again next time.